You probably have about 10 pints of blood in your body right now. That is roughly the same volume as 5 large bottles of soda. It seems like a modest amount, but tucked inside those 5 bottles are 100,000 miles of biological piping. If you took all the veins, arteries, and capillaries from your own body and stretched them out end to end, you would have a thread long enough to wrap around the entire planet Earth 4 times. It is a staggering, almost impossible number to visualize. But what is even stranger is that in all those miles of plumbing, it only takes one microscopic sugar molecule, a single chemical flag the size of a few atoms, to determine whether a life-saving medical procedure will heal you or kill you in minutes. We all walk around with this invisible security clearance stamped onto every one of our 30 trillion red blood cells, yet for 99% of human history, we had no idea it was there. We only noticed it when we tried to move blood from one person to another and people started dying for reasons that looked like black magic. Think about the last time you had a paper cut or watched a few drops of blood swirl down the drain after a scrape. To the naked eye, it is just a uniform red liquid. It is the great equalizer. But if you could zoom in 1,000,000 times, you would see that your blood is actually a highly restricted private club. Every person you pass on the street is carrying a specific set of molecular ID badges, and their body's security team is authorized to use lethal force against anyone who doesn't have a matching pass. This is the mystery of blood types. It is not just a medical trivia point you give to a nurse before surgery, it is a 20-million-year-old evolutionary record of every plague, parasite, and predator that tried to wipe out your ancestors. Why did we develop different types instead of just one universal version? The answer isn't a mistake of nature, it's a survival strategy written in sugar. Before we understood the rules of the security gate, the history of medicine was basically a series of very confident, very deadly guesses. In the year 1667, a physician to King Louis XIV named Jean-Baptiste Denis tried to save a feverish young man by pumping the blood of a lamb into his veins. Remarkably, the man lived, mostly because he only received a small amount. But when Denis tried it again on a different patient, the result was a catastrophic, agonizing death. The patient's body essentially staged a violent coup against the foreign blood. Denis was sued for murder, and blood transfusions were banned in Paris for the next 2 centuries. The doctors of the time were baffled. Blood was blood, right? It was red, it kept you warm, and it leaked out when you were poked. They couldn't see the tiny molecular, no trespassing signs that were already causing the lamb blood to clump into a thick, sludge-like gel inside the patient's heart. The breakthrough didn't come until 1901, when an Austrian researcher named Karl Landsteiner decided to stop guessing and start mixing. He took blood samples from himself and 5 of his colleagues, separated the red cells from the liquid serum, and began a systematic game of, what happens if I put this here? He noticed a pattern that had escaped every scientist for thousands of years. When he mixed some samples, the liquid stayed smooth. When he mixed others, the red cells clumped together in a process called agglutination. This wasn't a random chemical reaction, it was a targeted hit. Landsteiner realized that our blood cells are covered in tiny sugar-based markers called antigens. He identified 2 main markers, which he creatively labeled A and B. If you have the A marker, you are type A. If you have B, you are type B. If you have both, you are type AB. And if you have neither, if your cells are essentially naked, you are type O, named after the German word ohne, meaning without. This sugar-coated security gate is governed by a very simple, very ruthless logic. Your immune system is trained from the moment you are born to recognize your own specific antigens as self. Anything else is invader. If you are type A, your body produces elite search and destroy proteins called antibodies that are specifically designed to hunt down and latch onto type B markers. The moment a type B cell enters your system, your antibodies grab it, causing a massive pileup in your bloodstream. The cells rupture, releasing toxic hemoglobin into your kidneys and causing a total system failure. It is the ultimate biological wrong neighborhood scenario. This discovery won Landsteiner the Nobel Prize and finally made surgery safe, but it also opened up a massive hole in our understanding of human history. Because once we knew the what, we had to face the why. Why would evolution go to all this trouble to create different, incompatible groups? Why wouldn't we just all be type O and make things easier for everyone? To understand why the security gate has different locks, we have to look at who is trying to pick them. Think of your blood type as the specific shape of the deadbolt on your front door. If every person in the world had the exact same lock, a single master key could open every house on Earth. In the world of biology, those master keys are held by bacteria and viruses. For millions of years, pathogens have been trying to hack into our red blood cells to use them as fuel or transport. If we were all one universal blood type, a single supervirus could evolve a key to unlock that specific blood type and wipe out the entire human race in a single generation. By having different blood types, we are essentially ensuring that no matter what disease comes along, at least some of us will have a lock that the virus can't turn. This isn't just a theory, we have the receipts. When scientists started mapping where different blood types are most common around the world, they found that the map of blood types looks suspiciously like a map of historical disease outbreaks. The biggest, nastiest player in this game is malaria. For most of human history, malaria has been the #1 killer of our species. The parasite responsible for the deadliest form of the disease, Plasmodium falciparum, is a master at hacking into red blood cells. Once it gets inside, it forces the cell to grow sticky little, velvet ropes on its surface, causing the infected cells to clump together and stick to the walls of your blood vessels. This allows the parasite to hide from the spleen, which would otherwise filter it out. However, nature threw a curveball. In 2007, a landmark study of over 500 children in Mali confirmed something that researchers had suspected for decades. The malaria parasite is remarkably bad at sticking to type O blood cells. Compared to people with type A or type B, people with type O blood have a 66% lower chance of developing severe, life-threatening malaria. The security gate for type O is just too slippery for the parasite to get a grip. This is why, in parts of sub-Saharan Africa where malaria has been a constant threat for thousands of years, type O is the dominant blood type. It's not a coincidence, it's the result of a brutal, millennia-long sorting process. If you had type A or B in a malaria-heavy region, you were less likely to survive long enough to have kids. The people who survived were the ones with the slippery, type O lock. But if type O is so good at fighting off the world's biggest killer, why didn't A and B just disappear entirely? Why isn't the whole world type O by now? The answer is that the security gate is always being attacked by a different kind of thief. While type O might be the king of resisting malaria, it turns out to be a massive liability when it comes to other nightmares, like the plague or cholera. Take Vibrio cholerae, the bacterium that causes cholera. It produces a toxin that binds to the lining of the gut, and for reasons that we are still trying to fully map out, people with type O blood are significantly more sensitive to this toxin. During major cholera outbreaks in the Ganges Delta in India, researchers noticed that people with type O were much more likely to end up in the hospital with severe dehydration than their type A or B neighbors. This creates a biological tug-of-war. In one corner of the world, malaria is pushing everyone to become type O. In another corner, cholera is pushing them to be type A or B. This is why you see type B blood appearing at much higher frequencies in Central Asia and parts of India. It wasn't just a random genetic drift, it was a response to the local dress code demanded by the environment's specific diseases. We even see this in the history of the Black Death. Some research suggests that the bacteria that caused the bubonic plague, Yersinia pestis, has a surface structure that mimics the type H antigen found in type O blood. Essentially, the plague was wearing a type O disguise. Because the plague looked like self to a type O person's immune system, the body's security team was slower to react, giving the bacteria a head start. In Europe, where the plague decimated populations, type A might have been the winning lock because it looked different enough from the plague to trigger an immediate immune response. This, molecular mimicry, is one of the most fascinating ways the security gate evolves. Pathogens are essentially the world's best counterfeiters. If they can evolve to look like one of your blood types, they can walk right past the bouncers. We see this today with the norovirus, the infamous stomach flu that ruins cruise ship vacations. Norovirus needs to latch onto specific sugars in your gut to infect you. But here is the kicker. Those sugars are often the exact same ones that determine your blood type. About 80% of the population are what scientists call secretors, meaning they secrete their blood type sugars in their saliva, tears, and intestinal mucus. If you are a type O secretor, certain strains of norovirus find you delicious. They use your type O sugar as a handle to pull themselves into your cells. But if you are one of the 20% of people who are non-secretors, people who carry the FUT2 gene mutation, the virus has nothing to grab onto. You could be in a room full of people with the stomach flu and never get sick, simply because your internal security gate doesn't have the specific handle the virus was looking for. This brings us to a deeper, more ancient layer of the mystery. For a long time, we thought blood types were a relatively recent human invention, maybe a few 100,000 years old. But when scientists started looking at our cousins in the primate world, they found something shocking. Chimpanzees mostly have type A and type O blood. Gorillas are almost entirely type B. But when we looked at the actual DNA sequences, we realized that the A and B versions of our blood type genes haven't just popped up recently. They have been preserved for at least 20 million years. We share the same security gate architecture with ancestors that existed before we were even human. This means that the war between our blood and the microscopic world is the oldest conflict in our history. It is a war that predates the invention of tools, the discovery of fire, and the development of language. We were sorting our blood types while we were still swinging through trees. But wait, it gets even more complex. You probably know your blood type as a letter and a sign, like O positive or A negative. That plus or minus is the Rh factor, named after the rhesus monkeys where it was first studied. This is a separate protein that sits on the surface of your blood cells. If you have it, you are positive. If you don't, you are negative. This is another layer of the security gate, and it's one that can have heartbreaking consequences. If an Rh-negative mother is carrying an Rh-positive baby, her body's security team might see the baby's blood as an invader. During birth, if their blood mixes, the mother's immune system creates memory antibodies designed to hunt down the Rh protein. In a second pregnancy, those antibodies can cross the placenta and attack the baby's blood. It is a tragic example of the immune system doing its job too well. The security gate trying to protect the mother by attacking her own child because the ID badge doesn't match. Today, we have medicine to prevent this, but for most of history, this was a silent killer that no one understood. So why do we have 33 different blood group systems in total? Beyond the ABO and Rh systems that we hear about, there are dozens of others like the Duffy, Kell, and Kidd systems. Each one is a different lock. The Duffy system, for example, is almost entirely absent in people of West African descent. Because the absence of the Duffy protein makes your red blood cells completely immune to Plasmodium vivax, another type of malaria. It is a specialized security upgrade that evolved in one specific part of the world to solve one specific problem. When you look at your blood under a microscope, you aren't just looking at a fluid. You are looking at a highly customized piece of armor, forged by millions of deaths and narrow escapes. This brings us to the insurance policy theory of human diversity. If you look at any modern ecosystem, the most stable ones are the ones with the most variety. Monocultures, where everything is the same, are fragile. A single fungus can wipe out an entire forest of identical trees. A single virus can kill a whole farm of identical chickens. Humans avoided this fate by being genetically messy. Our blood types are a form of collective insurance. By maintaining A, B, and O types within a single tribe or village, our ancestors ensured that no single outbreak could kill everyone. If a type A plague hit the camp, the type B and type O people would survive to bury the dead and keep the tribe going. We are the descendants of the lucky ones who happen to have the right lock for the key that was being used at the time. Think about how this reframes your own identity. We often think of our blood type as a boring medical fact, but it is actually a gift from your ancestors. Somewhere, thousands of years ago, one of your relatives survived a horrific epidemic because they happened to have a specific sugar molecule on their blood cells that the bacteria couldn't recognize. They lived, they had children, and they pass that sugar molecule down to you. You are carrying a physical piece of their survival. Your blood is a library of every war your immune system has ever won. This historical struggle is still happening today, though the front lines have shifted. Modern medicine has mostly bypassed the need for the security gate to protect us from things like the plague or smallpox, but the gate is still there, and it's still influencing our health in ways we are only starting to map. For instance, research has shown that people with type AB blood might have a slightly higher risk of cognitive decline as they age, possibly due to how their blood markers interact with clotting factors in the brain. People with type O blood have a lower risk of heart disease and blood clots, but they might be more prone to stomach ulcers because of how H. pylori bacteria interact with their specific cell markers. Even COVID-19 showed a pattern where type O individuals seem to have a slightly lower risk of severe infection compared to type A. The security gate is still working, we just have new kinds of intruders trying to get in. And it's not just about blood. These antigens aren't just on your red blood cells. They are found on your platelets, in your saliva, and even on the lining of your lungs and your gut. This is why blood type is so critical for organ transplants. If you try to put a type A kidney into a type B person, the security gate doesn't just reject the blood, it rejects the entire organ. Every cell in that kidney is screaming, "I don't belong here," to the recipient's immune system. We are essentially walking, talking biological puzzles, and every piece has to be the right shape for the system to stay online. The most incredible part of this entire story is how much we still don't know. We can explain why type O helps with malaria, and we can see why type B might have helped in Central Asia, but there are still huge gaps. We don't fully know why type AB exists at all, given how rare it is. We don't know the specific evolutionary pressure that created every one of the 33 blood systems. We are still in the early stages of reading the book of our own blood. Every time you get a blood test, you are looking at a summary of a 20-million-year-old epic. The letters on that paper are a code that links you to the very first primates and to every survivor of every plague in human history. It is easy to feel disconnected from the ancient world. We live in a world of antibiotics, clean water, and high-tech hospitals. We don't worry about the dress code of our blood protecting us from a mosquito bite. But your body hasn't forgotten. It is still standing guard. It is still checking every single cell that enters your system against the master list of approved ID badges. It is still operating on the hard-won lessons of ancestors who died in the mud so that you could have the right sugar molecules to keep living today. Think back to that 100,000 miles of piping inside you. All those veins and arteries wrapping around the world 4 times. Every inch of that massive network is patrolled by a security team that never sleeps, using a set of rules that were written before humans even walked upright. The next time you see a drop of blood, don't just see a red liquid. See it for what it really is: a chemical passport, a molecular shield, and a living record of our species' refusal to go extinct. We started this journey by talking about how a single sugar molecule can be the difference between life and death. It sounds like a strange, arbitrary way to run a body. Why base our survival on something as simple as a sugar? But nature is nothing if not efficient. It found a way to use the simplest building blocks of life to create a defense system that has outlasted empires and survived ice ages. Our different blood types are the scars of our survival. They are the proof that we are not a single, fragile line, but a diverse, resilient web of different locks and different keys. And that brings us to the most haunting proof of all. Scientists recently discovered that even in the fossilized remains of ancient humans, people who lived and died tens of thousands of years ago, we can still detect these blood type markers. We have found a marker in the bones of Neanderthals. This means the security gate was already old when they were around. It means the same molecular flags that are circulating through your heart right now were also circulating through theirs as they sat around prehistoric fires. They were worried about the same invisible intruders. They were protected by the same sugar-coated shields. When you look at your blood type, you aren't just looking at a letter. You are looking at a definitive, physical link to the very beginning of the human story. You are the end result of a 20-million-year winning streak. The bouncer at your internal security gate has been on duty for an eternity, and he hasn't missed a beat yet. Every beat of your heart is a reminder that you carry the right ID badge for the world your ancestors survived. And that is a record that no virus, no bacteria, and no amount of time can ever erase. It is the definitive proof of who we are, the survivors. If you have ever wondered why your body reacts the way it does, or if you have a story about how your own blood type has played a role in your life or your family's history, I would love to hear about it in the comments. We are all part of this same massive ancient experiment. And if you want to keep exploring these biological rabbit holes and uncovering the hidden history of the human body, make sure to join us for the next one. After all, there are still 32 other blood systems we haven't even touched yet, and each one has its own story to tell. Think back to that paper cut we mentioned at the very beginning. That tiny, insignificant drop of red. It seemed so simple, didn't it? Just a little bit of leaked fluid. But now you know that inside that single drop is the chemistry of a 20-million-year war, the blueprint for a global insurance policy, and the sugar-coated proof that you are the descendant of a line of people who simply refuse to die. Every time you look at a scrape or a bruise, remember the 100,000 miles of piping and the trillion tiny flags. You aren't just carrying blood, you are carrying a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering. The security gate is closed, the bouncers are at their posts, and the molecular flags are flying. You are exactly who you need to be to survive this world, just like those who came before you. The proof is in the sugar, and it has been there all along.